Hi, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the RIS Step Up to Work Comp Success webinar series. I'm Kelly Marshall, and I'm excited that you can join today as we kick off the 2025 webinar series lineup by talking about the importance of return to work. A couple of things as we get started. Everyone has entered the webinar on mute. You can, however, enter any questions at any point in time using the Q&A feature, and we will talk through those at the end as time allows. So, of course, when you talk about workers' compensation, the phrase return to work is sure to quickly follow. But what does this even really mean? And how effective is a solid return to work program at impacting your bottom line? The presentation today will outline the importance of return to work and illustrate how the cost of workers' lost wages is truly just the tip of the work comp iceberg. Before we can do that, it's important to do a little bit of work comp 101, so hang with me here. Your premium as an insured is a base rate that's set by the State Division of Insurance, and that's based on recommendations from the State Bureau or NCCI, the National Council on Compensation Insurance. The base rates are really intended to reflect the hazards based on the work exposures in the place where you're working. You as the employer, therefore, don't have a lot of control over that base rate or any of the premium discount factors, since that's set by a different entity. But what you can control is your experience modifier or your EMOD. So again, a little refresher for you. That experience modifier is something that almost every company has. And an EMOD of 1.0 is considered kind of that break-even point or the starting point for any expected losses for your industry. EMODs are determined by NCCI, and it's based on that claim history, the 3-year look-back period, based on the experience of you as an insured. So it looks at the frequency and severity of the work comp claims that you've had in your workplace. The good news, of course, here is that a bad year thrown in among that 3-year period doesn't stay with you forever. But on the contrary, one good year is rarely enough to offset several bad years of claim history and experience. But not all claims are created equal. So a couple of differences here that we'll talk through are medical only and indemnity claims. Medical only are those claims where perhaps a little bit of a misnomer, but they may be super significant claims, but they aren't lost wage paid on any of those particular claims. So that's where injured workers are able to stay at work as part of their healing process. When those claims are reported to NCCI, they look at those and give them a 70% discount. So only 30% of those total claim costs are reported. On the flip side, indemnity claims are those where an injured worker may have accumulated some lost time wage benefits or had an impairment settlement paid. When those are reviewed by NCCI as it determines your future experience mod, they don't give any discount on those indemnity claims. So 100% of those claim costs are reported. So as you can start to see already, there's a pretty significant financial advantage to avoiding lost time and keeping your injured workers at work. Here's a quick example of how that plays out. So again, with that 1.0 being the starting point for EMODs, this slide illustrates 3 different companies with the same base price, but significantly different EMODs based on their claim history. So in the first example, the employer who has a 1.0 EMOD is paying exactly that same as the base rate for their policy premium, $100,000. However, a company who's had better claim frequency, maybe better return to work and manage some of those lost time wage benefits, has an EMOD of 0.8. Therefore, they're only paying $80,000 for that same premium. On the worst side of that coin, a different company with poor claim history has trouble with maybe returning employees back to work, has an EMOD of 1.5. They're paying almost double what that 0.8 mod company is paying at $150,000. So you can start to see already how significant it can be to prevent just a couple of those lost time claims. Of course, if it were that easy, we wouldn't be talking about it today, right? Early return to work isn't something that just happens. It takes lots of effort and teamwork on your part. But on average, approximately 75% of all lost time claims aren't even medically necessary. They're due instead to things like delays in medical treatment, delays in referrals to necessary specialists, and sometimes because of an unwillingness of employers to offer some sort of transitional or modified duty to those injured workers. Once again, this is where communication is vitally important at every step of this process. A strong return to work program can be one of your best deterrents against repeat and fraudulent claims as well. Regular communication and oversight of what the employee is doing become much easier when your employee is actually still coming to work on a regular basis. But return to work can also be valuable for the injured worker. And here you can see just a few of those examples. Being off of work can lead to an overall loss of strength and endurance when you think simply about the process of going through your daily tasks of getting up and out of bed every day, getting ready to go to work, and going about your work day. When you aren't doing those things anymore, then you start to lose that normal strength and endurance that it takes simply to get through the day. Employees can also lose an overall sense of their identity and their self-esteem just based on how they identify as being a paid part of the labor force and a valued coworker, for example. There's certainly also the loss of earning potential for the employee, especially if they are off work and not being paid their full wages. Loss of workability goes along with that loss of strength and endurance. We all know the longer that we're sick or on the couch, the less able we are to do even those normal everyday tasks that we're used to doing. And of course, the mental and emotional piece of that as well, that can result in things like anger and depression, just due to that sense of loss of your normal daily function and routine. So some benefits about early return to work. Of course, we've focused on the decreased cost. So if you have less or no return to work costs that need to be paid, you'll have lower claim costs overall, which then of course results in that lower EMOD and your lower work comp policy premium costs going forward. It's also proven that injured workers who return to work during part of that healing period tend to require fewer medical treatments and incur less medical expense. They're spending more time at work, being productive, moving around, getting some of that healing going on, and they aren't incurring additional medical treatments and medical costs. Medical Disability Advisor confirms this and says that people recover better and faster when they truly just stay active and engaged in their normal life as much as is possible while they're still healing, which leads to work becoming part of their therapy. That loss of physical fitness, the muscle tone due to any activity is prevented when people are continuing to come to work and go about their daily routines. Now, this might not always look exactly like jumping right back into the work that they were doing, but we'll talk through how some of those modified work assignments can truly become part of the overall rehab process in giving that employee that bridge back to their normal, regular duties, regular hours, and regular shifts. That increased communication is also a benefit of returning an employee to work as soon as is safely possible. So as I mentioned, that prolonged absence from an employee's normal roles, including things like absence from their workplace, can be detrimental to overall mental, physical, and social well-being. So think about that. When you come to work on a daily basis, you're keeping those connections, even if it's just a quick good morning or how was your weekend with your supervisor and your coworkers. And you don't have that increased additional tension due to both that personal loss of job and some of the identity that goes along with that, but also your coworkers aren't feeling that pressure of perhaps having to cover for you, make up for lost shifts or other things that they wouldn't normally be doing as well. So overall, it just really helps to preserve injured workers' self-esteem and that sense of identity that they find with being a productive member of the workforce. So of course, this all sounds great and ideal, but it's not always that simple, right? So I have one quick question for you all about a return to work program. Give you just a second to answer the question that should pop up on your screen about a written return to work policy, plan, or program. We sometimes use all of those words interchangeably. like most of you have had a chance to answer. And the majority is actually saying yes, which is wonderful. When we split between the no and maybe I don't know, we've got another half. So we're all right kind of on the fence there. But regardless, this should be good information for any of us, even if you do already have an existing return to work policy plan program, can always benefit from additional insight and what makes it even better. So if you were one that answered to the latter options on the poll, that you don't have an existing return to work program, or you aren't sure if you have an existing return to work program, this slide will be for you. A good place to start is to create a return to work policy program plan. This can be really simple, and we have some sample policies available on our portal as well. But really, it just gives you that jumping off point to say, we as an employer support return to work whenever that is safely possible for our injured workers. The next piece of this is to use objective job descriptions. And I would give that caveat to say use job descriptions, period, with objective being just a better modifier. The better information that you have about the jobs that you have employees doing, you can provide that then to your physician that's making those return to work decisions. And when they have good information about the jobs that you're asking for them to help return your employees to, they can make better decisions about what those employees can safely do when they have an understanding of what that is that's available to them. As with any good program, it's important to identify a champion as well. So when this isn't just a top-down approach or just an HR, just a safety thing, it helps to have employees who understand and can really support this idea throughout your facilities and your workplaces. And finally, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about this one, but it's also a good idea to brainstorm some transitional duty tasks. You may or may not already have some of those, and I will give you a few ideas as we finish up here shortly. So one of the important pieces of early return to work is also early reporting of injuries. So overall, you can see here that claim costs just get higher and higher the longer it takes to report injuries, both from the employee's perspective and then also from the employer to the work comp carrier's perspective. So immediate reporting of injuries can't be stressed enough. The sooner that we're aware of those injuries, the sooner we can start to get that employee the treatment and the care that they need, and we can help develop a good return to work plan. It's important to note too that return to work doesn't always follow a linear path. So you can see here at the very top of the triangle, our goal is always to return that injured worker to the same job that they were doing, the same hours and the same shifts that they were working before they experienced the work-related injury. That might take a little bit of a different path. We might have to start at the bottom of the pyramid where we have an employee who's working different hours, maybe a different job or different tasks, different pieces of jobs that they were doing before they were injured. But eventually, of course, the goal would be to get them all the way back to that same hours and same job. So next piece of this puzzle is the transitional duty. There are a few ideas for you here, very high level on this slide, and we will send some additional resources following the webinar as well. But just some things to get you started thinking about if this isn't something that's familiar to you or you don't already have kind of an ongoing list of transitional duty types of ideas. These can be used in any setting. So the things mentioned here, again, pretty high level, but can include things like education and development, which might look like having an employee who's injured complete maybe some of the required safety trainings or education that they're required to do anyway, maybe pursuing a new certification or some additional trainings. It could even look like having them develop some additional policy and procedure manuals or safety program information or different training plans that maybe would benefit you as the employer, but you just haven't had the time or taken the time to have someone do that. Can include things as simple as running errands. Maybe some of the things that we've streamlined, even things like answering phones or making return phone calls, scheduling deliveries. Those can all be things that we can use as kind of that temporary transition to get that employee some things to do that are productive, that are keeping them coming to work, and that also serve a purpose for you in the workplace. Organization, inventories, inspecting things, cleaning, those can always be utilized as well. And now I'm a little bit curious, since we've talked about a couple of ideas, if any of you have some really good ideas that you would be willing to share about some things that you've utilized in your own workplaces for light duty ideas. So I'll send another quick question for you all, just to answer if there are, in a few words or sentences, any other ideas of light duty tasks that maybe you've used in your workplaces that have been successful. I'll leave this one open for a few minutes so you all can continue to think and add your light duty tasks that you've maybe come up with too. So let's finish up and talk a little bit about what return to work success looks like. Again, this follows kind of those best practices with implementing a policy and then following that consistently. Make sure that your employees know that you have a return to work policy, they know what it is, and that they understand why it's important. It's also important to make sure that they understand, but that they receive prompt medical care and that you've identified those medical providers. This is where it's a good idea, if you don't already have an existing relationship with a provider that handles your occupational medicine, that maybe you can do some refinement of that. It's important to make sure that they understand, one, that you have a return to work program and that it's important to you to bring your injured workers back as soon as safely possible. Make sure that they know that you are willing to accommodate those work restrictions that they may have to issue for a period of time, that you have some transitional duty tasks available and that you're happy to do those, even to share that list with them if that's helpful. And you can also, of course, let them know that your intention is to form a partnership and to send your injured workers their way and ensure that they can safely come back to work as soon as possible. It's important, again, to know where your costs and causes of injury are coming from. So if you don't already, your best bet is to start to track and trend that information or to ask for help. We can certainly provide that as the work comp insurer. But when you know your causes of injury, where they're happening, how they're happening, then you can also start to work on preventing those things from happening. So as an employer, your company goal should truly be to have no lost time claims. Whenever possible, we're going to help you make every effort to find modified tasks and keep your injured workers at work. For those of you who may not know, we in fact have a full-time dedicated resource to helping with return to work with a return to work coordinator here at RAS. Remember that containing that lost time can play a huge role not only in your cost savings, but also in managing those long-term disabilities for your injured workers. So how do you help prevent the injuries in the first place, manage your claims proactively, and then rapidly institute a return to work plan and get those employees back to work as soon as is safely possible? Before I take a quick peek at the questions that may have popped up in the Q&A, for those of you who are ready to hop off, quick insight into what's next. You will receive a survey immediately following the webinar. It's only a couple of questions, so I promise it will just take you less than a minute, but it gives us a little bit better information about what you might want to see in future webinar events like this. You'll also receive a follow-up email that will share the link to this recording and have reminders about some of the resources that we shared today and where to find those on our portal. We look forward to seeing you again as we recognize Ladder Safety Awareness Month in March. when our 2025 Step Up Your Safety webinar series resumes with the next in our series, which is called Rungs and Rules and features ladder safety in the workplace. So thanks for joining us today. I'll take a quick peek if those of you who had questions want to stay on. One of those I think was answered. You will get a copy of the slideshow, and that will be posted on our portal as well under featured content. So if you're looking for this in the future or wanting to share it with others, you will have access to that as well. I think that's all we have for now. So thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next month.